Are you planning to see Silent Night this weekend? I saw this film last night. I had no idea what it was about. I actually thought it was a tie-in to last year's Violent Night starring David Harbour, but the worlds are totally separate. They have nothing to do with each other. The only thing I knew going in is that director John Woo directed it and that it was starring Joel Kinnaman because he's on the poster. Let me tell you, some of this film I thought was impressed. The concept I thought was good on paper. I'll break down what I didn't like about this film or what didn't work for me, what I actually did like, and if I recommend that you see it in the theater or wait for it to be released digitally or streaming. So, as I mentioned, this was directed by John Woo, who you'll remember directed, oh my gosh, he has a lot of credits, but he directed Mission Impossible 2. You may like that. He directed Face Off. A lot of people are impressed with his work in Face Off. He's directed a lot of films over the years, but for me, I think John Woo has been one note for me because he is a director. He's an action filmmaker. In that way, I mean, he does capture action really well. Filmmakers know that it is really difficult to shoot car scenes, and I think he shoots car scenes like nobody else. Like, he's a really good director when it comes to shooting somewhat impossible shots. So he directed this film. It stars Joel Kinnaman as this grief-stricken mute man who witnesses his son, who's 7 in this film, witnesses his son on Christmas get killed by a stray bullet by gang members. He tries to capture the culprits, the assailants, who are still in the heat of battle. They are still shooting at these rival gang members, are shooting at each other. He tracks them down and he is outmanned and outmatched and is shot to within an inch of his life. So he's got to nurse himself back to life so that he can, a year from this day, on Christmas Eve, kill everyone involved to take down these gang members. You've likely seen this plot unfold in hundreds of movies over the years, especially in the 90s and even 80s. Like, as I was watching this, it reminded me of the Steven Seagal films from back in the day, even the Van Damme movies from like the 90s. It was which director John Woo directed one of. It reminded me of that. It also had elements of Death Wish, the one that Bruce Willis starred in a few years back. It has, in other words, the typical tropes of the revenge films that you've seen a million times. You'll see that he tries to drown his grief in, a liquor bottle, and you'll see him break up with his wife or girlfriend. They're going to be estranged, and you'll see him knock things over out of rage, and you'll see him try to compel to the police to do something to find the people. You've seen this 100 times. You'll see the strategy or the conditioning, mind conditioning and physical conditioning with these montages of like workout montages. And in this one, you even get a muscle car montage being prepared to put his muscle car in the action so that he can have a getaway car if he needs to flee in the heat of the moment. You've seen this play out 1,000 times. Why I think this is good on paper is because he's mute. He's shot in the throat and loses the ability to communicate. And so the entire film is basically dialogue free. It's not a silent movie. We hear everything going on around him, the life going on around him, but he doesn't speak, and none of the supporting characters speak to him. So they communicate in other ways, which I think is very creative, but it's so riddled with these tropes. I think it is overshadowed by the fact that it is so rich in tropes that we've seen so many times. So Joel Kinnaman, again, is outmanned and he's outmatched, but he is prepared to take out these rival gang members without the help of the cops. Now, the first act, I think, is what lost me. I was trying to hold on. It was trying to force our hand. It was pandering for emotion too much. I mean, it was heavy over and over again of the backstory of, him being a family man, and the backstory of him being a loving father and a loving husband. It was overkill how they were selling this point to us. The audience is already going to feel for him and want him to get revenge because we saw his son shot and killed by a stray bullet. You don't have to force the audience to feel that, to know that, because anyone else in his shoes would want to do the same. But I think spending 30 to 40 minutes on that very point was overkill. And I think it showed that the script was underdeveloped. There wasn't enough story to carry on to the action. I think it depends too much on the great third act, and it makes the first act and half of the second act just feel or seem weak, in my opinion. I think this is a good film, and I think if you saw this in the theater, you wouldn't be wasting money. But just be prepared that that first half of the film is just overkill. Like, they're really soliciting feeling. We already feel it. So there's that. But that third act, when we really get into the heat of it, to the thick of it, it's really good, and it proves how good of a director John Woo is when it comes to action sequences. He films really good action sequences, and I like how authentic it feels because our protagonist is outmanned. He is going up against this gang that has all of the weaponry, and they know how to use it. They have the power, they have the money, and they have the men. They have the manpower. It was really difficult for him to overcome or to really get the revenge that he needed, because he really didn't know at the end of the day what he was doing and really what he was up against. But he had nothing to lose. He lost his son, he lost his business, he lost his wife. So he really didn't have anything to lose, and he really didn't care. He just wanted to put a bullet in the man that's responsible for his son's death. And if he had to die to do it, he didn't care. I think Joel Kinnaman did a fantastic job dialogue free, without any dialogue. The emotionality on his face and his body, he uses his entire body to convey the story, to convey feeling, albeit there's a lot of tropes that he has to use, but he did convey this emotionality that carries the heavy burden of the story to get to that third act. I think he did a fantastic job there. Listen, Kid Cudi, or Scott Mescudi, is in this film, and he is the head of this task force over gang and drug violence. It was so unbelievable. I love Kid Cudi. I like where Scott Mescudi, I should say. I like where his career is going. He's picking some really good projects. I just think for this film, he was miscast. Like, he was so unbelievable, and even there's the scene where the audience just cracked up because he is so unbelievable. Like, we were in on it. And I know John Woo, I know he probably wanted to work with Kid Cudi, and that's why he was cast in this film, but he really was miscast because he just felt he looked like the district manager of an Old Navy in this film. He really didn't sell that he was, he could understand the intricacies of gang intelligence and violence and narcotics and things like that. It just didn't sell me on it or the audience, because there's a scene, and he recovers, but there is a scene where it just was too unbelievable. So there's that. What I really liked most, I stayed behind for the credits, and I was so impressed that there were so many Latino crew members attached to this film. I mean, there were not dozens, there had to be hundreds that contributed to this film. And I think that was so impressed. I do not remember seeing a film like probably ever where there were so many Latino crew members involved in a project like this. I thought that was really impressive, and I hope that we continue to see people of color attached with the crew, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera. It was very impressive. Overall, this is not a bad film. I'd give it a strong 6 or 7. I think if you saw this in the theater, it wouldn't be a waste of money. But if you waited to see it, stream it, or see it digitally, I think it's worth the wait also. At any rate, Silent Night is currently in theaters now.